Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very senior and accomplished educator from Lagos, Nigeria, Professor Enase Okonedo. Professor Okonedo, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Professor Okonedo is the Vice Chancellor of the Pan-Atlantic University in Lagos, Nigeria. She's the former Dean of the Lagos Business School, and she serves on several boards. So let me start by asking you a question that from a chartered accountant to an educator. Tell me about your journey in brief.
Ashutosh, it was just pure serendipity.
Okay.
I never imagined that I would be an educator. I was at my graduation from university and becoming a chartered accountant, worked in the bank. And at the time, for me, at that time, I was following the money. I was more interested in the money. And, if I took a job in an accounting firm, it would pay me some amount of money. But if I worked in the bank, it would pay me 5 times the amount of money. So it was a no-brainer.
Correct.
And I chose to work in the bank. And I spent the first 7 years of my working career working in financial services, doing a lot of interesting things. But after 5 years or 6 years of being in the bank, I started to get restless. Because at that time, the financial landscape in Nigeria changed. It was about the time in the early 90s, late 80s, in which they liberalized banking. So we had all comers come into banking. And from structuring deals, playing in capital markets, it then became, gather the deposits, fix the deposits, and it was no longer interested. And I thought, okay, what can I do now? I trained as an accountant. I was a chartered accountant. I'd only worked as a banker. And therefore, I had no accounting experience apart from the little I had to do to pass the exams. And I thought, okay, you know what? I need to broaden my horizon. So let me go to business school and broaden my horizon. Then there'll be the possibilities. And so I decided I was going to quit my job in banking and then wait. So I had about a 6-month waiting period. And in this period, Lagos Business School had only just started, Lagos Business School Nigeria, and they had all those catchy, ads in the papers. It was more print media, the traditional media then, that advertising was prevalent. And I saw an advert one day saying research assistants needed. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I like the school. Let me go and see. I've never been there. Let me go and see what it is about. And I went there, asked to speak to the person in charge, and said, well, I need to apply for this job. He looked at my qualifications and experience. He says, well, you're overqualified. And I said, yeah, but why is that your problem? He said, yeah. I said, that would be of benefit to you. Why is it your problem? He said, oh, no, because it's only a 1-year contract job. It's for young school leavers. And, after that, why would you want to leave a steady career? I said, you know what, whether I have this job or not, I already decided I was going to leave. So don't bother about that. That's my problem, not your problem. Anyway, I persuaded him, joined the school as a research assistant. 5 months down the line, they said to me, we have a vacancy in the finance faculty. Would you like to teach? I thought, no, but I want to go and do an MBA. They say, it doesn't matter. You can join us and then do the MBA from here. And that was how my journey as an academic started.
Amazing.
27 years on, I have still remained here and I have loved it.
And as they say, the rest is history.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So let's talk now about Pan-Atlantic University, Lagos. Tell me a little bit about the university. What is the scope of what education you give to students? And what is your vision for the university?
Okay, so the Pan-Atlantic University actually came out from the Lagos Business School, which was established about 32 years ago now, the Lagos Business School. And after 10 years of being a business school, we wanted to be able to offer degrees, and therefore we applied to get a license to operate as a university in order to offer degree programs. And we got the license in 2002. And at first, Lagos Business School was the only school of Pan-Atlantic University. And we offered just the MBA program. But since then, we have grown. And now we have other schools within the university. So we have 4 schools. We have 3 units within the school that support it. And then we have across the various schools, We have about 8 degree programs that we run. Small size, we intend to remain small. We have in the region of 1,700 students that are in the undergraduate program. We intend to remain small. But I'd like to speak about what I consider distinguishing factors. Okay?
Yeah.
And, one of the things that, from the very beginning of Lagos Business School that we laid a lot of emphasis on and ensured that it traversed everything that we did was ethics. So the whole idea of business ethics, because we operate in a developing country, similar to other developing countries in which we don't really have robust institutions and in which institutions of restraints are there. And there's, in many instances, functional corruption, if I may. And therefore, in the way my sister put it once, the abnormal, is the normal, because the way of doing business is different from what you would find in more developed worlds. And I think you would know about this as well.
Right.
And we thought that we could seek to create or develop a new crop of managers that understood business ethics and understood the right way of doing business. And we took a multidisciplinary approach to teaching it as a discrete course and teaching it across all things. So we started doing this long before the global financial crisis, which after the global financial crisis, business schools started saying, oh no, we need to bring ethics. I thought, well, we've done this for the 10 years or more, 15 years. So that's one of the distinguishing factors.
Right.
And it has helped us in the university, because people sort of look up to graduates of the school. I'm not saying everybody who passes through the university and comes out always behaves in the right way, but at least we let people know what is the right way to behave in business. So that's the first thing that I think is a distinguishing factor. The second distinguishing factor is that we educate in freedom and with freedom. In my country, and perhaps I'll have a chance to speak more about this later, in my country, universities were largely owned by the states, by the government. But again, about the time when we were licensed, we were one of the first private universities to be licensed, which is about 20 odd years ago, when private universities came up. A lot of the private universities were faith-based. They came out of various faith-based organizations. And with faith-based organizations, a number of the universities that are there, almost all that I can think about, you come there, well, you may be compelled to worship in the ways that they worship. There's all sorts of limits and boundaries. I think that is I don't want to be extreme and say, but anyway, it's quite controlling. And we take the view that university is where the youngsters actually transit to adulthood. And if we protect them so much, we're not going to develop these people. And we always, our mission is very clear what we intend to do. We intend to form competent and committed professionals. And we want to encourage them to serve with personal initiative and social responsibility anywhere they find themselves. Right. And we feel by doing so, we will build a better society in Nigeria and then Africa at large. And so if that's the idea, we need to give people the room to be able to express themselves, the room to be able to think critically, the room to be able to take initiative, the room to accept responsibility for their actions and know that there are consequences. And if we protect them too much, they don't get that. So we educate in freedom and with freedom. Even though we're not a faith-based university, we do have a roots in a Catholic organization. But then we practice, we're very pluralism. Everyone is welcome, regardless of faith, worship, and all of those. So, but those two factors, and of course, I take it for granted that like most universities, we aspire to give a high quality education. But the difference is that with that education, it's just not the knowledge. Correct. It's the values, the character foundation, which we believe is critical for leadership in the African continent. So that's what we aspire to do.
Well said. And, I've been speaking to many university leaders like yourself. Post the pandemic, there has been an impact on online learning. I'd love to get your perspective on how has the Pan-Atlantic University adjusted to online learning and what is the impact?
Okay. So during the pandemic, we were one of the first institutions to transit without missing a day of classes to transit to online learning. Okay. And then, well, I don't know whether I should say offering classes online.
Mm.
Because when we talk about online learning and online teaching, it goes beyond just offering the classes online, So we were able to transit using, the normal platforms that almost the entire world used at the time, which was Zoom, and then later on we created, so that's what it is we do. Post the pandemic, we take a different approach. There's always this debate to say, what, should we continue with online learning and offer it to a lot of people? But I spoke in brief about what it is that we intend to do, and the values and the attitudes and the attributes that we hope to inculcate in the students that come. And for several of those, it's very hard to transmit online. Now, if all we were offering was the knowledge and the content, then that's fine. But if we're going to offer more than that, there are things that you can only transmit physically. And therefore, what it is that for our undergrad classes, where we're still forming these youngsters, these leaders of tomorrow, we don't offer degree programs online, okay? We do complement, but then we offer experiential learning. So with experiential learning, it's just not staying in the classroom, it's doing or using other means to learn. Nowadays, AI is becoming more popular, going outside, object-based learning. We're fortunate to have a museum at the university, and therefore we do object-based learning as well. So there's a lot of things that go beyond the traditional. So that's for the undergrad. But of course, for the executives, it's different, because the executives have attained a certain level. So with one of the schools, they very much focus on executive education. And therefore, it is that is really offer online. We offer hybrid classes using it. So we have, multimedia classrooms, very, very well equipped, that we're able to provide those things. And we have developed a bit more. Whereas when we first started, it was a question of taking the classes that I will usually deliver physically and give it online. But then it's not, now we have to be creative. How do you engage the students? How do you do that? So that's what it is that we've transited to. But obviously, all that we do in the school is supported by various, technology within the school.
Very interesting. And when it comes to the students who are now graduating, say for undergraduate or postgraduate, what is the kind of support the university is able to give to them to start them off on their careers?
Okay, well, I think that the support that we offer begins even before the leave. Okay, so we don't want to graduate people that at the time, after 4 years, that's when they start to get work experience. And therefore, what we try and do is that from the very first year, we encourage them to go on internships, voluntary internships. But in the third year of their studies, it is compulsory. So in the third year, they must go and do 12 weeks work experience in industry. So that by the time they're graduating, they already have a number of hours of work experience that they now to be able to contribute when they go for, so of course the internship provides an opportunity to learn, but it's also an opportunity for them to contribute to the organizations they find themselves in. And therefore we need to prepare them for that. So obviously, I mean, like several other universities, we have career services that we offer to them. How do you prepare your CV? How do you interview? How do you behave in the workplace? And then we have a career fair in which each year the top 20 companies come to the university to come and recruit the students, even for internships, which is, and I'm happy now because now it's almost a competition. We say, no, we can only take 20. So, a lot of companies are saying, how do we get in? Right. But beyond that, one of the things that we also do to prepare the students, even before they go out, is that there's a self-assessment that the students have to do. It's a personality assessment that enables them to recognize what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, how should they play, what are they inclined to. And this is something that the student does. The results are given to the students, but it's something that they can use to improve themselves. So we offer all this sort of support. But what we do that's also distinctive, at least in this part of the world, is that we offer personalized student advising. Every student has a mentor. Every student has a mentor. Amazing. That they must, so that's the bridge as they try and as they grapple with all the things that they're facing. With the youngsters nowadays, they have a lot of issues, mental health issues, challenges with peer pressure, all of those. So there's a student advisor. So we offer that personalized student advising and mentoring throughout the 4 years that they're on the program.
Amazing. The other aspect that, I was speaking to some people in the US, and a lot of the American universities have reached where they are because of a very strong research base. I was talking to some Indian leaders as well, and they said there's a lot of focus now Indian universities are doing on research. I'd love to get your perspectives on how are you tackling research at a relatively younger university like yours?
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you. Of course, the reputation of universities is built more on the research capabilities and research output rather than on teaching. That's the way it's been traditional. And therefore, as a young university, now I don't know whether I can still consider us young at 30 years of age, but when we first began, we began from a teaching institution, which was a business school.
Correct.
And at that point, it was just, bring people from industry, come and teach and all that. But when we became a university, it changed, because if we want to be credible and recognized as a good university, we need to do research. But it was a bit of a challenge, if I may say so, because on the one hand, we want to do research and publish in the top academic journals. But then those publications, those articles, those papers, those journal articles that we put in the top academic journals are not necessarily what it is that can impact the society. For you to do research that, you then need to focus on applied research. So it was a bit of, which do we pursue? We want to be relevant in our community. We want to come up with research that can change and transform society, businesses, and people. On the other hand, we need to do that. So there was a bit of a quandary as to which should we pursue. But we knew that for the reputation, we need to do that. So we've done a number of things there. We do encourage applied research. We're focused as a university on solving Africa's social and economic problems. So we encourage research in that regard. And we incentivize research that focuses more on solving Africa's problems, okay? On the other hand, we do have criteria. So our incentive structure, if you get published in a 4-star journal, it's there. So we try and achieve that sort of balance. But then we do that, across the university, we have various research centers. So you must know, just a few minutes ago, we're talking about, we mentioned Bollywood. In Nigeria, the local film industry is called Nollywood. And so here at the School of Media and Communication has a Nollywood Center in which they have, I think it must be, if I'm not mistaken, the largest repository of the Nollywood movies. And so that's, out of that comes the research. So they have a catalog of everything there. So the School of Media and Communications has this research center. At the Lagos Business School, we have a center. Of course, we always think about the centers for which the research can come out that can transform things. So three centers that we have. One, we were the first to establish a sustainability center in Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken, maybe in West Africa, which of course is looking at sustainability practices. It's something that's not very much discussed in a part of, it didn't used to be discussed so much. So it's to foster research, to put it on the agenda of organizations, of companies there, and then provide them with information, data, research that enables them to make informed decisions with respect to their practices and how sustainable those are. And then we have a center that seeks to deepen it's about financial inclusion. So it's about it's a sustainable digital financial initiative. So that's also, again, a lot of research. So the way we and then most importantly, a center for research in leadership and ethics, of course. We need that here. And it's always my dream that, the leaders in government are going to come from the university in the future. So what are we doing about this? So we have thematic areas that we consider important in the economic pool, to businesses, and then we build research around those.
Amazing. So Enase, I have time for 2 more questions for you. My next question relates to Africa, and everyone now says that this century belongs to Africa. Africa has got a young base of, children, if I can use that term. And the young are going into innovation, entrepreneurship in a big way. I wanted to ask you, what are you doing at your university to foster innovation and entrepreneurship?
I am so proud of what we're doing in this regard. We were the first to establish an enterprise development center, okay? Which was really focused, well, two things. So the first was that just recognizing, a little over 90% of the businesses in Nigeria are in the informal sector. People talk about the entrepreneurial spirit of Nigerians because everyone has a tradition, ancestry of small businesses. But the failure rate is very high.
Yeah.
And when you check, all the research that has been done to say what are the causes of failure, it's typically two things. Either the lack of skill or the lack of access to finance. And therefore, we set up the Enterprise Development Center 20 years ago, 21 years ago at the university to focus on the skill aspect. How do we support small businesses? How do we provide them with the skills that will enable them to create businesses that will thrive and outlast them? And how do we prepare them to be able to access finance? And through this initiative, we have trained last year alone. We work a lot with partners. That's what it is that we do. So last year alone, with one of the partners, we trained over 120,000 persons using various the online learning, radios, apps, all of those to be able to access those people. So that's the Enterprise Development Center. So now for the undergrad studies in the school, entrepreneurship is compulsory in all Nigerian universities. At least you must have a course on entrepreneurship in the second, between the second and the third year. So now this Enterprise Development Center that is made up of people that are really experts in the field are the ones that are in charge of the teaching of entrepreneurship and innovation across the university to all undergrads. And when we talk about innovation, I think you know this better than I, it's about creating value. It's not necessarily replicating a business that somebody has done. It's not necessarily buying or setting up a barber shop or a food business. No, those are good, but really, they're not really innovative. And now we've encouraged the students. So most of the students' projects now, we tell them, look, even within the university community, what are the problems you see? And how can we solve them? And indeed, right now, there's a long list of things that they've done. The inventions are coming faster than I can take them on and I adopt those things. But the few that stand out, we always had a problem with attendance and, monitoring attendance within. Some students have come up with an attendance monitoring app that works. There's they built a key part of the pillars for our strategic plan is really about community engagement. Some students have set up, because we have problems in my country with power and energy. And in local communities, most times there's no electricity, and therefore the small businesses cannot thrive. They've created a solar cubicle in which it is powered by solar, in which, and put this as a contribution to the local community, where the people can come, charge their, their clippers, their hairdressers, just the basic things that can enable them to continue running their businesses. So there's water meters, there's attendance, so there's a whole lot of these. So we foster the spirit, and I think it's encouraging to the students when they look around, they see the problems, they create things, and they see that the university takes this on, develops them further, and then, but the next big plan is that we've just commenced the design for an innovation hub. In which we will bring together the various schools and students to just have a place that they can come and collaborate and come up with inventions. I hope that this will be ready in 18 months' time, touch wood.
Amazing, fantastic. And my last question to you, as Vice Chancellor, what has been your most rewarding experience, and what advice would you give to upcoming educators?
I must say my most rewarding experience when I became Vice Chancellor, it's not up to 2 years yet. I'd been Dean of the Business School for 12 years before then, and I've just been Vice Chancellor for 1.5 years. One of the things, we offer a scholarship scheme to students within the community. But when I looked at the numbers, and we offer scholarships to all, but then we have 5 or 10. And when I looked at how many students from the community had come, and actually gotten those scholarships and passed through in the last 5 years. There were only 2 students that had come and they had dropped out. And therefore, it was now, why aren't the students coming? It was because they didn't pass the examinations, the entrance examinations into universities. It's as a unified tertiary matric exams that everybody takes. And therefore, I started discussing with the people in charge. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we set up a volunteer scheme. So faculty from the school, particularly from the School of Science and Technology and the School of Management, in fact, from 3 schools within the university, then volunteer at that time to teach the students in the community school for this entrance examination to universities, and also prepare them for the first school leaving certificates, just so that they can have better outcomes. So, and the local government chair, buses, they bring the students by bus and bring them to the school. My faculty volunteer and teach the students. And for the first time ever, 30 students from this community passed that exam to come to universities. Wow. Several of them we've given scholarships. It's just so rewarding, so I'm very proud of that, outside of what it is that we're doing. Fantastic. And for upcoming educators, what would I advise them? I would advise them to say, when we come to university, of course, we come to study particular disciplines. I come to study accounting, I come to study marketing, finance and things. But the way the world is now, even though we offer those respective subject disciplines, we need to think about how do we teach our students to think more critically? How do we focus on the skills that they need in a world that's dynamic and ever-changing? Because what we learn today, the way that knowledge is being created exponentially, may be extinct in 2 years or 3 years' time. And if that's all we've given them when they're in university, we're not setting them up for success. And therefore, we need to give a thought to how do we develop in them this desire for lifelong learning? How do we provide them with the skills that will enable them to thrive in an ever-changing world? But more importantly, we must do that with an eye to how we inculcate in them the values that we want to see reflected in society.
Well said, well said. And on that note, Enase, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your amazing journey from accountancy to education. Thank you for talking to me at such length about Pan Atlantic University and all the amazing work that you're doing. I learned many new things that you're doing in your university. I will take this back because I sit on the advisory board of one of the major business school chains in India. Thank you also for talking to me about the scholarships and how that was a big high in your initial tenure as the Vice Chancellor of Pan Atlantic University. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashutosh. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.